Hey, welcome to the show. You are listening to the Roosic podcast. We are a roots music podcast based out of Nashville, Tennessee, where we talk to the local music scene and beyond.
Today we have Jay Bragg. He is a singer-songwriter, performer, third-generation vaudevillian, and a Christmas aficionado.
Subscribe to the channel. Check it out. My favorite music in the world is traditional music. I love American folk music. I love the...
Sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine.
Oh, yeah,
yeah, do it. This is my dad's songbook right here. I'm sure we'll probably talk about my family history.
I love it. I'm very, very interested in that.
I bring it everywhere because
That's
it's
amazing.
like, if you want to know who I am, you just look at back to my family.
That's fantastic.
Third generation.
That's amazing. Yeah, but it's one of those things where are you good, Brian? We got the monkeys on there, so we're set. As long as the monkeys are there, it's a good day.
The monkeys hear no evil, see no evil, do no evil.
Yeah, Alexa found those. I don't even know where you found them. Just randomly one day.
Sail down the street.
Yeah. She texted the group chat and she was like, "Do we need these monkeys for the podcast?" And we're like, "Fuck yeah, we do."
Yeah, man.
It's pretty fun though.
But yeah, I think about that. I think about that a lot as someone who again like went to school to study traditional music, and that's the stuff that I love. There is that ongoing battle in one's mind. You want to embrace that music that you love and accept it for what it is, but you also want to recognize that you're living in 2025. You know what I mean? It's like, and that's...
Is that what year it is?
I know, right? Yeah. It's scary, terrifying.
It still hasn't sunk in.
I know, right? But that's something that I think about constantly, and I think the less I think about it, the better. Yeah. I think you just kind of need to, like with anything, you need to be a sponge and just take it all in, and whatever comes out, and you just sort of hone it to the best of your abilities and try and get it there. But it's that is something I think about a lot. And because I think as a consumer, as just someone who loves music, there is that thing when you're watching someone on stage pretend like it's not 2025. Yeah, that can, which can be. It's interesting because there are performers who do that I adore. That
I have to wear these?
No, I mean you don't have to if you don't want to. It's really up to you. The big thing is just being consistent with the mic.
Yeah, I can do that. If you want me to put them on, I can.
It's up to you. It's, up to you. But yeah, I think that's an interesting thing that I find. There are people for whom they can live in that world, and it doesn't irk me. And then there's other people you watch perform who try to do that, and it's like it feels fake almost, you know. And it's hard. It's a hard balance to strike. It's a really difficult. It's a difficult thing to do, I think. But
I have a lot of opinions on that subject for sure. Yeah. I mean, are we on?
Oh yeah, we're good.
Okay.
We're going.
We're going.
I mean, the whole concept of, authenticity, I mean, it's so I wasn't raised with country music. I was raised with blues, American songbook music, like, early pop, Tin Pan Alley type of stuff. My grandparents met in vaudeville, so I'm like a third generation.
That is incredible.
Entertainer, so my dad, they met on vaudeville stage. My dad, and they were entertainers their whole life. My dad has been an entertainer his whole life. And my first gig was at age 5, playing violin, playing Turkey in the Straw.
Oh, that's one of my favorite songs right there. There you go.
If you're a roots guy, you know that one. Am I close enough to this mic?
Oh yeah, there's a funny story. Since the time I was a little kid, I've loved this music, and I remember this is how crazy of a person I am. When I was little, and I was probably 6 years old, maybe 7. I loved all of the old Mickey Mouse cartoons from the 20s and early 30s. Yeah, and what my favorite was. Steamboat Willie, which they play Turkey in the Straw on that, obviously. And I remember...
Which is now public domain.
Which is, there you go. And I remember we went out to a restaurant with my grandparents, and like, I don't know why this story came to mind, but we went out to a restaurant in Florida visiting my grandparents, and there were these two musicians, a guitar player and a fiddle player, who were going around playing songs. They would go like table to table asking people what songs they want to hear, and they came to our table, and here's like 6-year-old Casey being like, I want to hear Turkey in the Straw. And they thought it was the coolest fucking thing in the world. This kid like asked for Turkey in the Straw. And in my head, it like started playing. I'm like, heck yeah, they know the song. Like, I just thought it was so cool.
That was the Suzuki. I did the Suzuki program.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And so they started me early on a Cracker Jack box fiddle to get your form right. And then once you got your form right, you got to open up the Cracker Jacks and eat them. So that was the carrot, if you will.
Interesting.
And but you know, it was mostly classical. And I remember the first recital we had in kindergarten. We did, Twinkle Twinkle, a few other, just rudimentary tunes, and then and we ended with Turkey in the Straw, and that was a defining moment in my life, because I just remember, because the Twinkle Twinkle stuff, it was just typical recital, okay, but it was the Turkey in the Straw that the audience participated in, was clapping their hands and stomping their feet, and I just felt that electric energy from the audience seeing the stage, and it opened my eyes. I still remember the dust particles coming through the stage lights. And I said, this is magical. Being on stage performing this conversation you're having with an audience. This is what I want to do. Yeah. And I was hooked. I was addicted from there. And that really is what started this whole lifelong journey, playing, writing, and performing.
So for myself, neither of my parents were musicians. They both love and appreciate music, and that's gotten stronger as time's gone on. But I was never around musicians growing up. It was just sort of by strange happenstance that me and my siblings all became obsessed with music, and I'm the only one dumb enough to like commit their life to this thing. But
right.
But for you, as someone who was brought up in it, what was your relationship like then with it versus now? Was it something that was sort of forced upon you, or was it something that was, yeah?
Yeah. I didn't, I enjoyed having that audience clapping their hands and showing us that excitement. But, once you get down into, practicing and how grueling it is to actually get to the point where you sound halfway decent, that is something that I tried to take many off ramps from, and that was not an option. Like so my dad is the musician in the family, for my parents, right? My mom's very musical. She's more of a dancer. My dad is a musician. However, my mother is the disciplinarian. She's the Italian, and she, quitting was not an option. She came to all my lessons, took notes, made sure that I had the lessons, made sure I had the instruments that I needed. Like I said, I started with the violin, and I played violin until about 8, and I just was not really that keen on that instrument, or at least in terms of the classical music that we were working on with Suzuki. So what really changed for me was when I was 8 years old. On Christmas, I got a drum set.
Dangerous, right there. Dangerous.
Shiny Remo little beginner kit, and that was another kind of defining moment. And it was not, I wasn't looking for an off ramp when I was playing the drums. I just loved it. And I'm a rhythm player still to this day, whether I'm singing, playing guitar, playing harmonica or kazoo or piano, I consider myself a rhythm player. And So I played drums. I mean, the drums were my main instrument. That's all. Like
he was a drummer
schooled in
initially,
drums.
too.
Yeah, that's what I started on as well.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, when you're a little kid, something about just hitting shit with sticks is
It's
really
appealing, yeah.
it's really fun.
Exactly. Yeah. And I was not a cool kid in school at all. Only child. Lived in a regional school, so all the cool kids went to like athletic practice. And I was the worst athlete ever. I mean, I was tiny, scrawny. I was, 60 pounds soaking wet. It was just like I had no chance at and no hand-eye coordination. Just a lousy athlete. And thankfully, actually, though, because I went home and I just beat those drums. I banged on the drums for, from 3 o'clock. I would get home like 2:30. Put 12 bagel bites in a microwave oven. I would watch like an episode of the Monkeys.
That's the dream.
The original series, the Monkeys. The reruns. I would watch that, and then I would spend like until my parents get home, like 2 hours just practicing drums.
At that point in your life, when it starts to become an obsession, do you think, looking back, the thing that you were falling in love with was songs and music, or do you think you were falling in love with the act of getting good at drums?
It was participating in these songs, and it was always like song driven. I would just crank up the tunes and certain just certain tunes that I was obsessed with at that point, and I just wanted to learn them. And music was the first time that I actually felt like I belonged, like I had something to offer this world. Because, like I said, I wasn't a good athlete. I was okay in school. Very, pretty dorky kid. Not like, not the guy that has like all the friends. Certainly not, any girlfriends. Like, the girls were repulsed.
I do think it's funny because I think in a lot of ways the cool kid with a guitar at school is sort of, we have this image in our head of that kid getting all the girls, and I'm sure that happens occasionally. But my experience and my knowledge of other people's experience of being a kid and getting obsessed with music is, no, that's all you do. All you do is you just sit in your room and you just obsess over music.
Yeah,
very true.
Yeah. It's a sort of an interesting fallacy I find in the world that I'm sure that exists in some way, shape, or form. But all the people that I know that have truly been captivated by music as a young person, it's just that's all you want to do. You don't want to do anything else.
Yeah, and it is like your gateway to feeling like somebody, like you have a contribution. And I think most of like if I look at like my heroes in music, a lot of them are more outcast type, loners and misfits, and music was that way of kind of understanding the world, of like contributing something. And it was and that was like the gateway for me to actually have community, to have other people want to hang out, and like my friends would come over and just hear me play like Freebird on the drums, and I would play it all the time, like, all right, play once, play it again.
But I think that's where art is so beautiful, and I agree. All of my favorite artists, whatever world they work in, whether it's music or film or painting or literature or whatever it might be, there is that element of it's all idiosyncratic to great degrees, because I think that's where universality sits. Is it sits in our ability to maybe not find ourselves, but to attempt to find ourselves.
Right.
And when we go through that process, it's like, if you're trying to be like everyone else, if you're trying to make something that's going to knock everyone's socks off, be like, oh, they're all going to relate to this one. You're not really saying anything. And I as a person on the other end of that, whether it's sitting down and reading words on a page or listening to a song, I think you can kind of smell that, but also it's only through that process of trying to be oneself that I think other people can see themselves in that. And so when people get good at that skill, I mean, it's a beautiful thing, and it's something that just some people have gotten so good at that it's frightening when you're truly in the presence of great art, of people who go through that process of trying to distill down who they are to a representation of that in some way, whether it be fiction or otherwise. It's can be frightening. I think true art can really be not in a negative sense, but in almost like in a visceral way. It can just affect you like that.
Yeah, I think it is a journey of self-discovery, self-actualization. I think the artist's spirit is one that it's constantly evolving. That's why it doesn't really fit into the norms of like category and genre, specifically fitting into certain boxes.
That's a very good way of saying it. Yeah, I think all of my favorite art, whatever medium, it is beyond genre.
Yeah, I mean, it's like,
and it's ever changing.
And I love, my genres from when I started to what I'm doing now have changed wildly, and it's all about I've spent a lot of time on the blues. I've spent a lot of time on rock and roll. I've spent a lot of time on jazz. I spent, when I came here, it was discovery of I'm like Magellan, going uncharted waters and finding new lands and civilizations.
And that's the fun of it. Like that I think is what brings, again, to kind of draw a parallel to the music that I really cherish in life. All of those people that mean the most to me and that I think are on the right track, whatever that is, go through it exactly the same way that you just articulated, which is it's this constant state of discovery. It's this constant state of, okay, there's this whole world here that I'm yet to dip my toes into. Let's do that for a while. And then you start to get your bearings and you say, okay, I'm starting to understand, at least maybe on a surface level, how let's try this. Let's go this way. And that is, I think, where the fun of this is. And I think there are certainly people who can live in one particular world and can be incredibly competent at that. And I think that there is a beauty to that as well. But
I couldn't do it.
I couldn't do that either.
I got, when I came here because I really want to know everything and become, gain my doctorate in country music.
So you moved out here a decade ago?
2015. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay,
a decade. Okay. Yeah, just about. And so I was up in Maine, Big Fish and Small Pond, playing in a band called North of Nashville. We were doing a lot of touring. It was a two-man. It was a two-man kind of outlaw country, Americana type thing. So I would have bass drum, and I still do this a lot. I'm going to be doing it this weekend up in Maine. I'm doing a tour with North of Nashville, but I played a bass drum with my right foot. I'm standing up, bass drum, right foot, mounted tambourine, left foot, guitar, harmonicas, and singing.
That's fantastic.
And then I have my buddy Andrew playing the fiddle, and he was just, and you mic that kick drum, and you mic the guitar right, or you EQ things right, and you close
like
your eyes
$1
and you think there's got to be at least 3 people on stage, and we were able to tour the country because it was so economically sound, just doing the two-man thing, but I was yearning, like the stuff that I was listening to when I was in Maine, because I grew up with more like, more freewheeling blues, rock and roll, jazz, and folk music. But I was really, I was like obsessed with like Merle Haggard, George Strait, Alan Jackson, and Randy Travis, some of these like great vocalists, and everything's really, really clean, and there was not much improv, and like, so the first from 2015 to I made several records that are straight up country records. I went on tour with Alan Jackson, got a chance to go, got asked to go out on and open up for his arena tour in 2019.
That's amazing.
Which was a huge, huge deal. Yeah, one of the biggest opportunities I've gotten, I think, here, and so I really, but I think once I kind of gained everything I was looking to gain and understand about country music, the traditional side of it, then I was kind of ready to move. Now what's next? All right, I have that. That's now part of my tool chest.
That's in the tool belt. Let's go learn something else.
I've now learned this skill. What's next? And so like a lot of like I've had fans that probably wish that I still made like straight up country, like honky tonk music. And I still do that, I still write those songs and I still play them, live. But right now, like what I'm obsessed with now is like going back. I got my dad's songbook here, right? There's 431 songs. These are the songs that he plays all the time. And I'm going back to more like Tin Pan Alley type of writing. So way back in like the 1920s, 1930s, 1940s, these writers like, Johnny Mercer, and, Cole Porter, Irving Berlin, Harold Arlen, these type of writers that were blending, their jazz and classical chops into, early popular music. I'm a product of vaudeville, that's where my grandparents get their roots. And, I'm obsessed with that kind of like performance art, the variety show. I'm actually developing a way of a reboot of the variety show that I'm going to call New Vaudeville. Which is gonna be, because I when I go see shows, to be honest with you, even major acts, there's a lull. If they're playing a 2-hour show, about an hour in, I just sometimes they could be killing it, and I just want a little bit of variety. Okay, so what my concept now is bringing back that vaudeville idea where you have a music act or two, but you also have a magician. You also have a ventriloquist, a contortionist, a fire eater, an illusionist. Okay? Like, no one's doing that shit.
Yeah,
I love the idea.
So that's, like, I told my dad this because, he's Mr. Vaudeville, and, you get it from his grandparents, and he's like, you got to do that. The hardest thing will be finding the talent, like people who have this, like these circus abilities.
I think it's, oftentimes people complain about the current state of art or performance. Pick whatever box you want to check, and I'm sure that there is some validity to some of that. But I also think that there's never been a better time to explore ideas like that. Because now, thanks to the internet and how connected we all are, I think there is a real possibility to have a sort of resurgence of that kind of performance, and to be able to get the best of the best together to really put on a captivating show like that. I mean, I think now you can absolutely do that. Whereas even, 10, 15, 20 years ago, that would have been, I think, a taller order. But I would love to see something like that come to fruition.
I think people's like, we have very short attention spans that I think almost the culture is demanding a little bit of variety into a show. And I like working in humor, and I like working in like, some dancing and just some old-fashioned show-busy type stuff.
As a songwriter, just to kind of, I want to pick your brain about this a little bit. As a songwriter, I think that one of the most difficult tones to strike is humor. Oftentimes when people talk about humor in songs that can be sort of dismissive, and we can kind of look down. We can really look down on it as sort of, there's those songs, and then there's the real stuff. I happen to not think I'm not one of those people myself either, and I really think that I think the hardest thing in songwriting to do is to truly be humorous and to really put to approach that in a serious way. I think that that's certainly the case in certain music of that era. I think of the Tin Pan Alley sort of golden era, there is great material in that. I think that in the Medicine Show world, I think that there's great material in there. I think we, as a culture, we've done it successfully before, but contemporarily, we're not as sure-footed with it for some reason. We almost feel like, I don't know if we can pull this off right now. For you as a songwriter, do you have that sort of hesitation when you really try to bring humor into a song, or do you think of it more as a challenge?
I remember the first like kind of big meeting I had here with a publisher. I came in with like 5 really like, songs that would tug at your heartstrings, right? And I felt like I was going to really impress this guy. And he's like, "You got any funny songs?" I'm like, "Well, funny songs, jeez." I'm like, "Oh, really? I don't have any. I don't have any songs that are laugh out loud funny." Yeah. I actually did that. I just forgot that I did not expect that question from him. I thought he was wanting my deepest material, And I think
the funny stuff can be the deepest material. You know what I mean?
The thing, if it's done well, I mean, I think there's several guys. I mean, one off the bat, John Prine. There is just this, wry sense of humor. And so much of what he does, Paul Simon, will drop, this dry humor in so much of his music. I think to do it well, I mean, I think, great comedians. I have so much respect for comedians. I think you are an evolved species if you are a very good comedian.
We've talked about this as well.
Yeah, I think comedy is probably like one of the most difficult art forms you could possibly do.
I would agree. Yeah. With music, we can hide behind the songs. If we're starting to bomb or whatever, you just go to that song that that's going to get the crowd back. You are so naked up there as a comedian, and I think comedians, when I'm like looking for inspiration, like say on stage, of how can I be a better performer, like be a more magnetic performer for the audience. I don't go to musicians, not modern day musicians. I look to comedians because that's a master class. The ones who really, really do that well. And you have to be so intelligent to make that work.
Sure.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
And I find that all of my favorite performers, or many of my favorite performers, approach it in that same manner. And that is, I mean, that in and of itself is a life's pursuit. It's that finish line you're never going to cross.
Yeah.
But it is such a fulfilling thing to work towards.
Yeah.
I mean, like someone, I think having humor in the songs themselves is a skill. And again, a lot of my favorite songwriters, whether it's Prine or whether it's Warren Zevon or Randy Newman or Lou Reed or whomever, there's so many of them have that ability to truly make you laugh. That's a skill in and of itself, but there's also a skill of just performing, of being on that stage as a performer and being captivating. That is a hard skill. Someone like Todd Snider, who I think Todd is one of the best performers probably alive at this moment. And he can just stand on stage and talk to an audience and you're captivated. But that people, I think, see that, and they often think that that's something that it's just innate in you as a person, or it's not. Meanwhile, that is decades and decades and decades of refinement and trying to get good at that skill. I mean, the man keeps every set list that he's ever performed in every location. He knows every story he's ever told. It's a craft like anything, and you get good at that craft. For you, do you know who Steve Poltz is at all? Absolutely,
he's another one.
I love Steve Poltz is one. We've been just talking about him recently. He's one of my favorite songwriters in the world. I think he does the same thing. Yeah, exactly. There are people who are just. But the thing is, the key ingredient here is to be very, very, very comfortable in your own skin. Yes, absolutely. That is, I think, it's, you can't really teach that. It either comes from, I think it comes from a lot of experience on stage, but really the inner work that goes into becoming comfortable in your own skin. Forget performance. But just being
life in general.
I think that skill. I think there are elements of that skill that apply when you're on stage. I think there are also elements of that skill that apply when you're checking out at the grocery store. You know what I mean? It's like you need to be competent at both. I think you need to be. I completely agree. You need to be wholly yourself in any situation, and people like Steve Poltz or Todd Snider, I think, are incredibly capable of doing that. And they're also incredibly capable of putting in the time to be just unbelievable performers when that proscenium is there, when they're on that stage. Those are two incredible skills. I would argue the former is probably more useful because it transcends the performer. It's a part of just who you are going through life. And I think that is probably the secret ingredient to being a performer, is putting the work in on that. Because a lot of people, I think, overlook that. A lot of people don't realize that that's such an important part of the equation. And that's a really hard place to get to. That's probably the hardest place to get to, period. For you, what has that journey been like in your life to get as close to that as you can? Therapy. I've been in therapy for 15 years. I practice, meditation. I do a lot of journaling. I have a lot of, every day is a day where I am getting closer to understanding myself and my place in the world and how I can be useful, how best I can be useful to this world. It is, trying hard not to care what others think of you, which is excruciatingly, it's a very tall order, especially, in the digital age when your value is often judged by, digital metrics that are available for all to see. But, I think one of the things that meditation taught me is how to be undistracted and being totally present, and finding that flow state. When you're on stage, that doesn't matter where, if you're being creative, it's you're going to do your best work when you find that flow state. And that requires you to be very much absolutely present, non-distracted. And that is what I'm searching for anytime I am playing music, is to lose myself, like lose the facade of Jay, and all that is there, all that I'm living in is music, and having this conversation with the other musicians on stage, or allowing the music to go where it goes. If it's just me and my guitar, it's really hard to do because you have all these external factors of judgment, so it's very hard to get there. But I think the more you are secure in who you are, accepting of your strengths and weaknesses, not really, believing in your value, whether this crowd I very much, I've played a lot of shows where it's like
what is with these guys? I mean, this is like my best material. I'm doing a great job. There's no reaction here.
We've all been there.
We've all been there, right? But oftentimes, like, whoever's in that crowd, you might not be for them. Like, I make music. Like, I stopped playing like a lot of honky tonk, like downtown. Like, I did a lot of lower Broadway type stuff, and I don't really do it anymore. For a lot of different reasons, but one of the reasons is, like, I don't really make music at this point in my life for people that are just partying. That's not what that's not what I do. Like, I can do that. I have done that thousands of times. But I'm searching for something far deeper. I'm looking to reach your soul and to have a conversation. I want you to understand, like, I want to inspire. I want to be inspired. I want to be aspirational. I want to have fun. I want to channel joy. I want to show you what love looks like and make you feel happier and more joyful and want to be more kind to people when you leave the show and feeling uplifted, like that song Light It Up. It's all about, like, kind of being this light. Because, let's face it, we live in a pretty dark times right now. I mean, I am like a bit of a political junkie. I don't really bring my politics in my music as much, but it's dark. And all the more that I think the best service, I could write topical songs all day about, how we're leaning into autocracy, how we are repeating, mistakes from the mid 1930s Germany. Like, to me, it's pretty clear where this is heading. I can write very, very topical songs on that subject, or is that a best use of my time, or is making somebody feel better, making somebody, like, allow them to soothe their soul for a little bit. I'm more in the business of giving you a vacation from that, because, and off stage, if you want to talk about, politics, I'm happy to do it. I think that conversation needs to be had, but I think my job is much better served as somebody who is a uniter, as somebody who can somehow just remind us what we have in common, to remind us to laugh and to smile and to be joyful. That's where, like, my family history, the Vaudeville family history, that's what Vaudeville was. Vaudeville came through a time of the Great Depression.
It's that escape is really what it is.
Yeah, it was an escape.
Yeah, totally.
And it was for common folk, whose lives were miserable. This is before, you had labor laws. And, these people work 16, 17, 18 hours a day sometimes, a lot of them immigrants. So their lives were really, really hard. So this is form of escapism. It wasn't putting your head in the sand and just being like, ignore the problems of the world. It was a respite.
Yeah, you need a break every once in a while.
Yeah, I also constantly remind myself as well that even just the process of suffering is a blessing. It's very, very rare for me that I'm playing a show where everyone in the room has paid to come see me, right? Usually you have you might have a good chunk of the room there for you. You might have a good chunk of the room there for other people. Some people have just showed up, right? I think that environment, which is what the environment that most of us live in as musicians, right? Most of us as musicians, it's few and far between that we play a show where everyone's paying for their ticket to come sit down and watch you, right? That's sort of a certain level where you get to, and that happens, and that's a blessing. But I'm always reminding myself that even though that's most frequently not the world that I live in, I love the exercise of being on stage with a room full of people who probably don't know what my thing is.
Right.
And
the challenge.
And the challenge of that. And I think that actually, and maybe this is just trying to always look at these things through a positive lens, but I think as a performer, I would actually rather be in that situation. Right? I'm sure that there are benefits, monetarily and otherwise, that come with the other. Right? I'm sure that that's a good thing. But as a performer, when I actually sit down and do the intellectual work of thinking, what do I actually prefer? I think I like the situation better. I think I actually enjoy being on stage, and that play with an audience of, do you care about this? Can I get you to care about this? And I'm sure some of that is, again, just trying to have a positive outlook on the situation you're in. But I really do think that that's true. I do think that one of the things that I've fallen in love with as a performer is that give and take and that play. For you as a performer, do you get a kick out of that? Is that something that you enjoy, or is that a different?
Yeah, I mean, I love the challenge. Sometimes like when the crowd is just kind of, somewhat engaged, that challenge. I think it's easy when you go up there and everybody's there to see you. It's paid a ticket, and I mean it's just like shooting fish in a barrel, and it's wonderful. But it's like I think that's why I think everybody should like get some strong bar band experience.
Yes,
like
here.
Seriously, I think. And, I think there are less opportunities for that. Not so much here. I mean, we have plenty of that here.
Yeah, we're very lucky in Nashville in that regard.
But, like, even the places that I grew up, playing, especially up in Maine, I went to college in Vermont, and then I went to Maine, and that's where I got, like, my, let's say I got my bachelor degree in bar band, my bachelor degree in bar band experience, right? But like 75% of those bars don't they're either not there or they don't have music anymore. So I think there's less opportunities to start a band and to play gigs for people who don't know who you are, and you have to figure out, what is it that you do, how you engage an audience, what is it, bring in, kind of your autobiography and kind of build a show and figure out how to perform and how to put out fires, because there's a lot of fires to be put out on, especially on a bar band.
And contemporarily, it's very interesting as well, because nowadays it does seem, like you said, there are less opportunities for that kind of thing, but also I think that with social media and I'm not a social media hater as a consumer. I don't really use it, but I use it for music and for promotion, that sort of thing. But I'm not going to sit there and scroll through TikTok. I'm just not that kind of person. But it is interesting because there is a whole other skill set or whole new skill sets that are developing as to how you can perform through social media. And it's interesting because for me, I find I don't really have interest in it, probably to my detriment, right? It's probably not a good thing that I would rather hone the skills on a bar band stage, like getting comfortable with that than getting comfortable with performing
to your phone.
My phone. Yeah. But I don't know. Again, it's like, and I can intellectually sit here and understand that all day, but I just don't really care. And I'm sure there's a level of necessity there that, as we've all done, we've all gotten better at that over time because it is such a new thing. But I don't love that the same way that I love getting on stage and performing at a shitty dive bar. I do, however, feel that there is a new generation of people coming up for whom that's just what performing is. Performing is, and I think I want to say worse, but it's only going to be exacerbated as time goes on, right? It's only going to be more of what being a performer is. Well, you stick a phone in front of you and you do. And it's interesting because it's even just the idea of compositions, right? If you're composing for a live performance, right? We kind of know the world that we know the sandbox you're playing in. Whereas if you're performing or composing for a 30-second, Instagram reel, then you just need 30 seconds of music. There doesn't need to be anything on either end of that, right. So it's like even on the sort of fundamental level of conception, these things are different. Like for you, as time has gone on and social media has kind of gotten more involved in all of our lives. What is your relationship with it currently, and how has it changed as time has gone on?
It's a love-hate relationship.
That's a loaded question.
Yeah, no, it's a love-hate relationship. I mean, yesterday I was swearing at Mark Zuckerberg for 30 minutes. I said, I fucking hate Facebook, over and over and over again. You know, because it was some login issue, and you know, it is okay. So I think I made a kind of a post the other day about you know, the quest. Like, it's tough being a musician because, you know, to continue to be successful and grow your audience while at the same time being successful at, like, for me, I want more inner peace. You know, I want to be less agitated. I want to be more patient.
Yeah, social media certainly does not help with that.
Exactly. I want to have less anxiety. I want to. So, like, all of the things that I know will help, that I need to work on to be the best version of myself. And to be the most healthiest person I can be, mentally, physically, emotionally. All those things are at odds to the demands of social media and keeping up with that algorithm, staying in good graces with the algorithm. You know, and it's constantly, you know, I mean, you're trying to figure out, you know, you're trying to. I mean, I don't chase virality, but I know that everybody feels good if they have a post that
does well,
that does really well, and then you're like, okay, I get what
you're
what
always
was
chasing
that?
the dragon.
Yeah,
you're
so
always
it's like,
chasing the dragon.
Exactly, and there's never enough. Like, you know, you could get a million views, that feels good, until the next day, and your next post is like 100, and it's like, oh, I suck. Like, this was a total fluke. And, you know, and it's not like specifically creative work, because there's always like kind of a sales pitch involved. I think, I mean, I gotta say, I think what TikTok, I mean, you know, I think TikTok, where it is, you know, like the content, I think that is really magnetic, is the stuff that is completely unrehearsed. It is really off the cuff. It's like not edited clearly at all. It just, and
no, I agree.
and
I
it
think
is-
that's
it-
the most captivating,
right?
Yeah.
And like that is kind of the antithesis of like Instagram, where it's more airbrushed, where you're kind of putting a facade out, where it's constantly, you know, sales pitchy, you know, not really connected to reality, but the reality, you know, or there's the perception that you're trying to push out to the world. You know, that said, what I do is, I mean, I'm a creature of routine. You know, I wake up generally at the same time, you know, take a long walk with my dog, I practice gratitude. I speak out loud the thing, like 5 to 10 things I'm grateful for. Then I say, where am I winning in life? Like, what did I do yesterday, basically, that pushes me forward to be a better person? And then I go through what is like my ideal day look like for today, and kind of I set my intentions for the day. This is all with this walk with my dog. And then the fifth thing is, what will I let go of today? And then that equips me. Then I go back and I make an espresso, and I go and I do maybe about an hour of work, and usually I will allow half an hour for content, and then it's time for breakfast at 10, and I'm on social. If I'm following the rule that I'm trying to set for myself, I really don't worry about content for the rest of the day. However, a lot of people message you through the app. And the thing is, you open the damn thing up and it sucks you in.
And it's so time. I mean, so for me, there was a stint in my life where I was exclusively doing lessons. Like I just kind of went all in on doing music lessons, and so I was constantly doing content, and I was constantly putting out content on Instagram and on YouTube. And you look at a 5-minute video that you've put up, and somebody sees that and they think that equals 5 minutes of work, but it's also time. It's so time consuming. I mean, obviously something like this is on a whole other scale because, there's so much involved with this kind of thing where not just editing the thing and then, but the promotion through different social media. But like something like a podcast, I think it's a little bit more understandable. Someone sees that and can kind of understand, okay, I get the level of work involved to get something out there like that. But even if you're just looking at, 5 minute, 1 minute, guitar lesson videos, it just eats away all your darn time. It's one of those things where I think until you experience that and you really try to go deep into the weeds, you kind of take it for granted, and then you're in it and you're like, this sucks. Yeah. where did the last 2 hours of my life go?
Right. And
so having those,
you're not really creating anything.
Oh yeah, no, not at all.
It's that said, I like to, so say if I'm working on, like this morning, I was working on playing that old Scott Joplin song, The Entertainer. I was just working on the chord changes, and I was doing the melody on kazoo, and that was like kind of my half an hour like practice session, from about like 9 to 9:30 this morning. And I'm like, I got a cool like arrangement for this thing. And then, so like, I'm like, I'll just set up my phone because like I can document this for myself. Like it's good enough to present. And so maybe like in my practice or if it's writing a song, maybe like I'll get something, 75%. But if I'm going to present it to someone, I want it to be like, 99 to 100%. So give it a little extra juice. And so I think that it's almost like a game that you play with yourself. It's like, okay, you did good practicing that tune, but is it good enough to present to other people? And that's kind of a perfectionist.
That is one of the things I do like about social media is that because you have to get something to a presentable form, it kind of forces you to work it up further to a point than you would have if you didn't have social media, because you're like, oh, I want to post about this or whatever, and you have to get it to 100, where without that, you might stop at 75 and move on to something else. So I think that is a good thing that comes out of it for sure.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to ask you, kind of stepping back a little bit, as someone who grew up with that world around you, what did you find as a kid was the first music that you discovered that was yours?
Interesting. Well, I always feel like I'm borrowing, constantly, borrowing from the stuff that I've absorbed. But what do you mean specifically that was mine?
When as a kid, we all are subjected to our parents' musical tastes, etc. But what was the music you found that, especially as someone who grew up with a pretty regimented approach to music, and someone where it kind of seems like that was something as a young person that was thrust upon you more so than a choice. Okay. What was the music that you discovered that you felt passionate about, where you thought, oh, this is something outside of what I'm accustomed to hearing in the home that I really love, that moves me, or that I think is exciting?
Like the grunge scene in the 1990s, for sure. I feel grateful that, I think for rock and roll, I lived through kind of a renaissance period. There was like, the 60s and 70s, 80s was kind of lame
Got a
for
little
rock.
rough,
But the 90s was brilliant. I mean, you know, we'll never see that again. You know, rock and roll. I mean, that's a whole other podcast. But like, you know, so, you know, but you know, a lot of the stuff coming out of Seattle, you know, Nirvana, Soundgarden, you know, Pearl Jam. I mean, I loved Green Day. I remember I went to I presented. You know, I went to a Christian school, and we had a class of of contemporary Christian music class, right? And at the end of the suffering through all these lame songs, right? You could bring in what you were listening to, the music that is yours. And I brought in the Dookie album by Green Day. And I gave a whole presentation on it, you know, and I remember my teacher really didn't like it. He didn't like my presentation or the music. And he said, well, I think Jesus would feel differently about this music. But
That's how you know it's good.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it made me want to listen to it a lot more.
Yeah.
I will tell you that.
You're like, when I come around, it's never sounded so good.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, you know, like the music that was peaking through, like, I would say, like, you know, 92 to 96, 97, like, you know, all that rock and roll. That was like the first time I was like, this is my music. This is my generation. I felt connected with like the music. Like now, I usually feel connected with old forms of music. Mm-hmm. That was one of the only times I think in my life that I felt connected with current music. That I thought it was speaking my language. That it was articulating the things that, you know, the experiences that I was having, the feelings that I was having, and emotions I was having. So I feel super grateful to have.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because I know for, you know, Brian and I we're pushing 30, and it's one of those things where, you know, as a kid, there were certainly times when the local music scene was really important to me. Like I grew up in a time when sort of the math rock scene in the SoCal area was big, and like, so that kind of thing I always felt, you know, you can dial into those moments, but culturally on the whole, when I kind of step back and look at the macro, there's never been a time in my life where what the big thing of the day is relates to me. I've never had that relationship with, when I say pop music, I don't mean as a genre, but popular music. Sure. It's never been there, and I do. Part of me is always fascinated by people that have had that relationship with popular music in the past, because that's been the case through, it seems like, all of, you know, the last 70 years up until about 5 seconds ago. Mm-hmm. So I'm always just interested by people who, by people's relationship to popular music, and to that sort of feeling of, maybe not collectivism, but that feeling of being one of the thing of the whole.
Zeitgeist of the moment.
Exactly.
I mean, I've really never thought about it in those terms, but that was the only time that I felt connected with the music of that modern time, that, you know, that I was living through.
When, as you got a little bit older and you started to listen to more kinds of music, when did you find that, kind of going back to this really, when did you find that you became aware of your connection to the music of your family and your family's past? When did you sort of rediscover it on your own to find that you had a love and a connection to that kind of music outside of just it being forced upon you? Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, just in that matter of, you know, that journey of self-discovery, self-actualization, and wanting to know, I think at some point a lot of people want to know where they came from and dig into their roots a bit more. And, you know, I've always performed with my dad. I still do. My dad's in his mid 80s now, still performing at nursing homes, and he came out on tour with us.
Amazing.
He did our Christmas tour with us this year.
That's awesome.
But I always loved, because he would always play this music from the vaudeville era, like the Tin Pan Alley era, the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, probably 1965 is probably the last cover. He probably doesn't know too many stuff after that. It's like old stuff. And I started really coming back. I think just musically, I was needing some inspiration, and I felt a little bit lost. After I kind of did the Alan Jackson thing and was really kind of sinking into the country thing, and I'm like, all right, this is cool. I like it stylistically. There's a lot of stylistically, sonically, there's a lot I love about it. Culturally, didn't really feel a kinship with it as much. So, I started where does my roots, what is the music of my roots? And I started just to understand where I was going to go, what waters I was going to go, uncharted waters I was going to try to explore next. Was asking my dad, I'm like, Dad, will you write down your entire set or send me, I thought he had this all typed up somewhere, right? He does it shorthand, okay? I mean, look at this. Page after page after
That's
page.
amazing.
He writes this all with a pencil and paper. Oh, all these songs. And he sends this to me.
A lot of songs.
Yeah. And I'm like, this is it. If ever I need a North Star where I'm because you can get pulled in all these different directions as a professional musician, as an artist, and trying to understand, how, you need to pay the bills. It can lead you down some paths that aren't as fruitful as others. It can bring you a little bit further from the garden than your heart really wants to go, I followed the muse back 3 generations to really, a lot of this stuff is his parents' music. So, I had to go back to go forward in a lot of ways.
Brian and I have had this conversation on here before, but I do think, at least as far as popular music goes, that era of Tin Pan Alley being king has really never been rivaled. And I think because of the world we live in now and the way in which the music, not just the music industry, but technology, the way we interplay with technology, we're never going to see something like that again. I think that is the kind of crown jewel of American popular music. But when you listen to those songs, what is it specifically about them that you find the most compelling? Because I just think it's I just think it's some of the best songwriting we've had as a society.
We talked about it. It's melody. It's those melodies. I mean, even a song like King of the Road, right? I mean, that is what a sophisticated melody over a 3-chord song. Trailer for sail around, roam the left the 15 cent. No phone, no pool, no pets. I mean,
Roger's the best.
Yeah,
The best.
that's like a jazz melody, and it's over 3 chords. That is a I mean, that art of being super, I think, inventive, creative, with and stretching the boundaries of what notes can you put that in this chord progression, whether it be a sophisticated 12 chord progression or a simple 3-chord song.
Speaking of another guy who could really throw humor in a song, you know what I mean? Like
Exactly. Yeah. And so like it's the melody that really, because a lot of those songs, lyrically were pretty simplistic, you know. They were, you know, about you know, I think, you know, most of them were simple love songs about relationships, but it's the melody, and you know, the what I love, like everything that I play has got to swing. I love that element of swing of you know, I love anything that has a good shuffle, some swing to it.
Gracias.
And a lot of that is like my obsession with the blues.
Yeah.
You know, Louis Armstrong is probably my favorite musician ever.
He's up there. He's if we got a Mount Rushmore, he's certainly on it. Yeah, I think, I mean, as someone who, one of my great joys in life in regards to music, really the two that I cherish the most is songwriting, and the act of putting songs together. I think is fascinating, just looking under the hood and seeing how they work. But then also the lineage of music, of American music, I think is absolutely fascinating, and tracking how we have gotten to the various forms of music that we have, I think is just, I mean, it's one of the things I just obsess over in life. I think it's really fascinating. And that the popular music of that era is incredibly unique because it is this very lightning in a bottle moment where all of these seemingly disparate forms of American music are caught together. And that's happened continuously throughout American history, whether it's the blues, whether it's rock and roll, whether it's happened quite a few times where we've gotten these interesting amalgamations of things. And we're because of technology, we're not going to see something like that again, really, which is some ways kind of sad, but the world continues to move on. But I do find for that kind of popular music, it is a very, very unique blend of ingredients that gets you there. And it just gives you a very interesting output. It's different than jazz. It's different. I mean, I think the great American art form, the two great American contributions to the world are probably jazz and the Western. You know, I think those are probably the two things that we've brought to the world that are the most potent.
Two distinctly American art forms.
But there is something interesting about that music that is different than blues. It's different than jazz. It's different than country music. It's different than all these incredible forms that I love. And I always find it's very difficult to put my finger on exactly what it is of that era, but it is that lightning in a bottle. It is that immediate capture of the moment that, you know, jazz was huge in its heyday, but it was never the popular music of the time in the way that kind of music was. You know, country music is much the same way.
Well, I mean, you know, in the swing era, I mean, you know, Benny Goodman was as big as any.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, but yeah, it was
Charlie Christian was
in terms of in terms of jazz being pop, the pop of the time. It was probably that swing era.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's just interesting. I think that looking at how that kind of music also evolved into different things too is really fascinating. But when you sit down and you have a document like that you can pour over, what of it? Are there songs in there that you were surprised that were in there? Like, were there ones that kind of caught you off guard, or was it more or less what you expected?
Oh no, there's a lot of surprises in here. I mean, like, look, I mean, you know, Blowing in the Wind. You know, that is my dad loves Dillon, as do I. And there's some really, I mean, most of them I've heard him sing before, but I would go through and I'm like, I didn't know you did that song. Like, what was he working on? We Are the World. He was working on this song the other day.
That's funny.
You know, the Michael Jackson, Lionel Richie, you know.
That's funny. The super song.
Yeah. And like, so my dad, I mean, it's incredible. Like, because he has his gigs, and those gigs, I think, keep him alive. Like Puff the Magic Dragon, you know? I forgot about that song.
That's a good
but
one,
like,
yeah.
he's constantly working on new material. Like a whole section on Al Jolson. I mean, this was Vaudeville.
I do
days.
love me some Al Jolson.
But yeah, and there's a lot of Beatles on here. You know, My Girl, which I do that one all the time. I mean, I do most of these songs. I do, and the ones that I don't, I'll just pick this thing up and I'll start learning them.
Who are, I mean, as someone who, like all of us, has a vast array of music that I think interests you, who are the biggest influences at this point in your life when you step back and you see, okay, who are the musicians, songwriters that have had the biggest impact on you? The kind of pound for pound kings and queens. Who do you think they are?
Yeah, I mean, they're you know, like I mentioned, you know, Bob Dylan. I mentioned Paul Simon. Bruce Springsteen has always been. And Springsteen, both as a writer and as a performer. I've seen Bruce like 15 times, I think. Which is actually not a lot to like some super fans. You know, I know some people from Jersey who's like 15. Come on, you're still a virgin.
Rookie numbers.
But you know, I think I mean, like I told you, like, you know, like I love Irving Berlin, Cole Porter, you know, Hoagy Carmichael. I love all that.
Hoagy. We talk about Hoagy all the time because I love Hoagy.
You know, I mean, there's just so many. John Prine, I love John Prine's writing. You know, Dean Dillon, you know, guy who's basically written all of George Strait's, you know, hits, is one of my favorite writers. I just go through kind of seasons of like one of my favorite writers of all time. One of the reasons why I moved to Nashville was Kris Kristofferson. He's like one of my heroes. You know, talk about a brilliant, you know, I mean, Rhodes Scholar. Like, I mean, he taught, you know, the guy lived, he's like an American icon, you know, was in the military, Rhodes Scholar, extremely, you know, book smart, actor, Renaissance man, you know. He's one of my all-time favorites. Merl Haggard, you know, one of my all-time favorites. There's a lot. Yeah. It's really hard to...
Yeah, and I another through line, I guess, that I always think is present with the people that I admire the most is usually they do tend to be people that have tried a lot of different things. Mm-hmm. Don't get me wrong, there are people out there that I love that just have stuck with songwriting or performing, and that's all that they've ever done. But I do think a lot of the people that I really admire the most are Renaissance men. They're people who just wanted to try different things, and oftentimes were quite good at a large swath of different things. Like we've talked. Yeah, there's quite a few people I think that Brian and I talk about on here that kind of meet that criteria. But like someone like Shel Silverstein, I think is a really good example of that. I mean, that man did a lot of things, and he did a lot of things incredibly well. And it's interesting when you have people like that, because some people will hear that name and they'll think Shel Silverstein, the short story writer, or something. Yeah, they'll think The Giving Tree. Some people will hear it and they'll think A Boy Named Sue. Some people hear that name and they'll think of his visual art. That's something that I really love, and I think that's actually a really powerful thing as a person, is to not allow yourself to even be boxed in terms of medium, and to be able to transcend that. I think that is one of the hardest things to do as an artist, is to transcend that and to try different things. Yeah,
it's tough because, you know, you want to follow your curiosities for sure. The thing is we don't have time to do everything. Yeah. So like I've written a manuscript for, I developed a character called King Kazoo, and I do a thing called King Kazoo and the Reindeer Band. We did it for our Christmas tour, which I do a Christmas tour every year called Songwriter's Christmas. And King Kazoo is this fictional character from the North Pole. And I developed this whole like storybook manuscript. I've written the manuscript.
I love this.
And my goal, my 2025 goal was to start pitching the manuscript out to publishers because I want to have a storybook version of King Kazoo. It's a really, really interesting story, and it's a Christmas story. And I think, I started digging on, researching and understanding, the process of pitching to publishers for, this one would be, it's like more of a storybook, you call it a children's book, but it's for children's and adults like Shel Silverstein's. The Giving Tree, is equal. I reread that, a couple months ago, and I wept. It's a beautiful story. There is more in those however many pages of that book than there are in most 1,000-page novels. Exactly.
And that's quite a staggering thing to bear witness to.
So I want to complete this manuscript. I would like to get... I have a really good feeling that the right publisher would want to publish this book. Because it would be also like... anything that is a perennial, perennial content, like a Christmas book, would, is people would be very interested in that.
Absolutely.
The story is really, really cool and unique. I'm reading like what would go into this. I would probably have to devote, 60% of my bandwidth for the year to that, and it's just like it's hard to know what to focus on. That's a hard thing.
The older that I get in life, the more that I understand that it's all just about time. It's not about money. It's all about time. And even something like this silly show, it's so much fucking time. and again, that's not a complaint. It's just I think you start to understand that that you just need to make decisions and say, we're going to do this for a while, and we're just going to try and we're going to go down this rabbit hole and see what happens. And it's a hard, it's a difficult balance to strike, but I do think that that's one of the biggest challenges of life is just trying to allocate time the way that you want to. Because but I would rather be in that situation, right? There's so many things in life that I feel just like I want to grab life by the horns and just do it. Mm-hmm. And I would rather be in that situation of feeling like there's just not enough hours in the day than to feel like the days are just slowly inching by. And, that sounds like an absolute nightmare to me.
Yeah.
So besides that, what else is on the horizon? What else you got coming down the pipe?
So I did, I am doing a tour called the Joy of Summer Tour. So I learned a lot from my Christmas concerts, and I like working around a theme, where obviously the theme is Christmas. And so I wanted to do something where the theme is just music that really pairs well with the summer season. So I'm doing a whole, and what I do, it's like 75% originals, 25% covers. It's a bit vaudeville where there's audience participation. So we're going to be doing that. We're going to be doing multiple tours in the Midwest and do some down here, and in the Northeast. I'm getting back in the studio to record some of the tunes that I played earlier.
Heck yeah.
And I'm really jazzed up about this new vaudeville idea of this variety show.
I really like this idea.
What I'd like to do, I'm in the scouting portion of it. So I'm trying to scout. If I can scout like maybe a few really unique, unusual acts, like a contortionist,
fire eater.
Like,
we need,
I would probably need to talk to a lawyer about some of these swords. I'd love to get a sword swallower.
See, that would be fantastic. Yeah.
But they would have to sign a waiver of some sort. I cannot be liable. And God forbid,
it sounds risky to employ a person who swallows swords. Yes. I don't know how that works.
But they're out there.
Some legalese involved.
I'd be scared to pay that guy.
If you have an unusual talent that would have that you know, harkens back
there you
to
go. Then
the
hit
circus.
Jay up. We're gonna make this happen. We're
Vaudeville
gonna make it
area.
happen.
Hit me up, because what I want to do is and we're gonna do the Nashville version of this this summer. And what I'd like to do is do a really stellar job, give people like an experience, like, you know, like they've gone back in time, and really like a period piece of, like, you know, the 1930s, and record it. Ideally, we would find a home for this where it would be a weekly residency, some place that in Nashville, because this wouldn't probably be a traveling show, because getting talent like that on the road would be a big to do. So ideally, I'd like to. I think if we do a really good job with it, and I'm really, you know, I do well with the marketing side of things. That's something I enjoy doing. But I think one of these places that have like a speakeasy type of place that has a stage.
Totally.
I would love to do like every
I could
Saturday.
see like a show like that doing really well.
Yeah.
Like, I could see that taking
Or even
off
like,
for sure.
do you know? Now I'm just throwing random things. We'll talk after this. I've got some. I got some spots in town that I think could be really good for that. Yeah, this has been a joy. Thank you so much for doing this, man. This was fantastic.
A pleasure.
This was a ton.
Yeah.
This is like a ton of fun. I'm really glad we did it.
Yeah, no, thanks.
yeah.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having, you know, these conversations, and you know,
it's been
you've
fun.
got the gift of gab like me.
Oh
you
yeah,
know?
I could talk all day. Yeah. Brian just sits here and looks pretty. You know?
Yeah,
pretty much.
Yeah, well, we need that too, man. I know. I'm not giving you that kind of supplement.
Well, thank you for doing this, man.
Yeah, no problem.
Oh, yeah.
My pleasure.
Cool. This was a ton of fun. Yeah. And I was really love the songs too, man.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, those were good.
Brian, appreciate it.
First kazoo on the show.
Oh, good.
That's
Yeah,
a milestone. And the first harmonica.
Yeah, that was a big day for us.